Hello everyone, welcome to the Apocalyst Review of Sonic the Hedgehog. This movie was first released in February of 2020 and was directed by Jeff Fowler. It's in the fantasy/sci-fi genre, and I will add that it's in the video game adaptation subgenre as well. Going in to see this movie, I was with a motley crew. We were celebrating one of my friend's birthdays, who was a longtime Sonic fan, and went as a relatively larger group that included people as young as a 9-year-old girl and my father-in-law from China. The baseline for what everyone knew about Sonic going into this was therefore very broad, as the 9-year-old is mostly familiar with newer iterations of Sonic, while the friend celebrating his birthday is in that sweet spot where he knows both the old and the newer stuff, and our Chinese friend who knows nothing about Sonic and was about to have his very first taste of what the blue blur was all about. The amazing thing is that every single one of them enjoyed it. Amazing! Finding anything a group like this unanimously enjoys is rare, so it's safe to say that they must have done something right with this film. So, what about me? I'm not going to lie, it's probably no surprise I'm pretty excited to get into this one. What exactly is my history with the franchise, and what were my thoughts? For my part, I grew up playing video games. My first system was an Atari that my dad found abandoned in one of the warehouses in the garage, or in the storage facility sector of A to Z Rental where he worked. Shortly after I was able to get into Nintendo because friends and some people in my family had one. It's funny the memories that you can remember from when you were a kid, but I actually do recall the first time I heard of Sonic. I was in first grade at a Catholic school, and yes, I had a nun for a teacher, and maybe someday I can get into some of the crazy stories surrounding that, of which, believe me, there are many. Anyways, my best friend, a kid named John, and I were with another kid we hung out with sometimes named Matt. John and I would often have sleepovers on Friday nights where we would go out bug hunting, trying to catch crawdads/crayfish, or just general exploration outside during the day. But at night, we'd always stay up late playing Nintendo games. Matt knew this and told us of a new system, a mysterious system I might add, called Sega, that was even better than Nintendo? According to him at least. There was a game for it that he specifically talked about called Sonic the Hedgehog, and it was so awesome that we just had to spend one of our Friday nights at his place playing it. I remember I asked him if he'd beaten it yet, because you have to remember this was well before the internet and most kids didn't have strategy guides, not to mention many early games were cryptic and tough as nails. So to beat a game was quite a feat, as you usually had to figure most of it out for yourself. He said he had actually beaten it and mentioned that the last level was called Brain Scramble Zone or something like that. I don't know why, but I remember it all specifically, probably in part because both this new system, which, seemed kind of magical, and seeing Brain Scramble Zone intrigued me. We went over to his house one Friday shortly after that, and I had my first encounter with the blue blur. Yeah. I was essentially a Sonic fan from that point on. Once I got into the Sonic video games, I loved them almost as much as I did Mario or Zelda, maybe even more so for a time. There were also a couple of cartoons playing at the time where I found out that Sonic was fighting for his freedom on the planet Mobius against the evil forces of Dr. Robotnik, like William Wallace of Scotland fought for freedom against the King of England. I would try to get up on Saturday mornings early enough to watch episodes of Sonic, though the cartoons weren't nearly as good or detailed as the comics. Because I loved the game so much and enjoyed the cartoons to some degree, I really got into collecting the comic books and couldn't wait for each issue that Archie Comics released. At some point in high school, as I got distracted with other things, I quit resubscribing to the Sonic comics. Still, it was a sad day when I heard that Archie Comics announced that issue approximately 290, I think, came out in December of 2016, and would be the last comic they were publishing for the franchise, and that the series was ending. It was such a big part of my youth that it felt like a small blow to the gut when I heard the news. I didn't really intend to ever renew again, perhaps, but it was just comforting knowing that they were out there if I wanted to. Who knows, for my kids or something. My first child was actually born last week. Come on, think of the children! Kind of like with Snickers, I'm trying to eat healthy, so I'm not buying them much anymore for myself, but I still enjoy seeing them on shelves, tempting me when I wait in line at the grocery store, and knowing that should I buckle under the pressure of an intense craving on a particularly tough day in this beastified tale of life, they are there ready to be consumed and satisfy that candy-sized hole in my belly, or to buy them for my kids. The games, aside from my experience in first grade at my friend's house, as previously mentioned, I eventually got a Sega Genesis at my mom's house. Oh yeah, that's a system all the cool kids had. 16 bits of awesomeness. Mortal Kombat with blood? We all thought so, at least. Sega does what Nintendo don't, as claimed by Sega at the height of the console wars at the time. Castlevania Bloodlines, Vector Man, and of course, Sonic the Hedgehog. Growing up, I lived through much of the through much of the console wars, a rage between Nintendo and Sega of the video gamescape. Like many other kids around my age, we didn't have the luxury of owning more than one console or even very many games. The ones you did have, you would play the living shite out of. Though eventually, after my parents' divorce, I did end up getting a Super Nintendo at my dad's house as well, so I was lucky enough to have both. Anyways, getting back to my Sega, I got a system that came bundled with Sonic 2. It was amazing, and the first time I got all the Chaos Emeralds and saw Sonic turn gold and become Super Sonic, it blew my mind. And Tails using his tails like rotary blades to fly and speed alongside Sonic was just awesome. My sisters and I used to play it together. Sonic was always controlled by me, of course, and whichever sister I played with would back me up as Tails. I saved all my money and eventually was able to buy Sonic 3. I still remember my mom talking to the cashier saying, "My son saved up a long time to buy this. He's earned it and is really excited." Yeah, I was excited. Great game, but what really cranked that Kaizen up to 11 was when Sonic and Knuckles came out. I remember I was in Toys R Us back in the good old days when it still existed and was known as the place where a kid can be a kid, and saw on display as a playable demo for the first time. At that time, I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. The graphics and levels just looked spectacular to my young eyes. This was a special cart designed almost like a light Game Boy Genie, or Game Genie, that did things to Sonic games. For example, you could connect connect it to Sonic 2 and Sonic 3 to play as Knuckles and Sonic 2 and get extra levels and all sorts of extra stuff when you pop in Sonic 3, and it changed like a freaking transformer into Sonic 3 and Knuckles. It was awesome. To this day, I remember how sweet the floating island was, and Dr. Robotnik had a giant mechanical egg that hovered in orbit, ready to roboticize the entire planet like it was a freaking Death Star. The visuals were just great, and playing through it was just a blast. I played the heck out of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and got every single Chaos Emerald and secret that it had to offer. This day, I love it. The thing that stinks about it, though, is that the cartridge combination to get Sonic 3 and Knuckles requires special emulation solutions, and to my knowledge, while I can get both Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles in my current consoles, I cannot get Sonic 3 and Knuckles, that game, that particular combination game that was unlocked putting both cartridges together. Every time it puts together official Sega collections, at least, from what I've read, it just takes too much time and would therefore cost too much money to get it ready in time for whatever arbitrary release date they've picked out. If anyone knows a way to get Sonic 3 and Knuckles on the PS4, please comment below, as I'd love to hear how. Anyways, then along came Sonic 3D Blast, which my mom and stepdad got for me the Christmas of either, I believe, 96 or 97. This is the last Sonic game that I had any significant amount of playtime with while it was new, and was also the last of the Sonic games I played through from beginning to end. I've heard a lot of people talk bad about this game in recent years, but I really enjoyed it. At the time, the pseudo 3D effect of the isometric top-down view looked really neat, and kind of reminded me of the Sonic version of what was done with Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars, which is this day one of my favorite games of all time. I played from beginning to end, and I believe I was able to get all the Chaos Emeralds in this one too and become Super Sonic. The music in these games, every one of them, was top-notch. It was just superb. To this day, music from nearly all the games gets stuck in my head from time to time. It's that good. To me, the games after Sonic 3D Blast is where the Sonic franchise began to lose its way. While I never got a Sega Saturn or Sega Dreamcast, the new Sonic games just didn't look appealing to me, and whenever I saw them, I just had no real desire to play them. A large part of that is probably that most of them were now in true 3D, and not only did that completely change the gameplay, but I just didn't enjoy the early days of 3D as much as I did Sega Genesis or Super Nintendo sprite graphics. So, there's my experience with the franchise leading up to this. When I went in to see this movie, these are the memories and emotions that came flooding back into my mind, heart, and soul. So, it's a part of my childhood, and therefore a big part of what makes me, the Apocalyst Reviewer. As anyone who follows this channel knows, canon is extremely important. If a movie or story of any type for that matter doesn't follow it, here at Apocalyst Reviews, we get very upset. Going into this, I expected this adaptation to be a cheap cash grab that would only appeal to kids and was going to take a huge dump on the canon of the Sonic universe, likely treating it with complete disregard. To me, bringing characters like this in the real world is something that usually comes off as cheesy in my eyes. However, Jim Carrey was going to be in it. I loved him growing up in the Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, and Dumb and Dumber movies, among others, and to me, this made it a lot more legit and opened up a world of potential. Also, Sonic looks really good in this. He looks exactly like he should. It's incredible. So how does it hold up? Let's find out, my friends. This is where I'm going to get into spoilers. So, spoiler alert, you've been warned. Okay, so, first of all, I will say that while the Sonic stories I've been exposed to can be quite serious in a cartoonish sort of way, both the animated series and comics both had tendencies to embrace a certain comedic goofiness that would make adding the comedic undertones brought on by Jim Carrey, who plays the role of Dr. Robotnik, in line with what I've seen in the past. And let me tell you, Internet, he did a phenomenal job here. He was legitimately funny in a way that I did not expect. While he's nowhere near embodying the iteration of Dr. Robotnik I would have expected to see, I mean, for one thing, he doesn't even have a belly that would put Santa Claus to shame like he does in the games and comics. However, he did a good job reimagining the character and bringing him to life. He was truly the star of the show. Every single time he came on screen, he had a snarky, arrogant wisecrack that was genuinely entertaining, and oftentimes laugh out loud funny. I mean, there were many times, not only me, but I heard the entire audience laughing at the theater. He was just great to watch and enjoy to see on screen again. This movie takes place on Earth, and at first having seen the previews and knowing this going in to see the film, I was a little upset about it. I thought that it was not the setting for any of the Sonic stories I had been exposed to, and it was a negative decision. However, the movie laid my fears to rest about this. In a flashback showing how Sonic ends up where he's at, we're shown a young Sonic in a world that looks very much like the first levels of Sonic 1 and 2. Good enough for me, as the world of Sonic we all know and love does in fact exist, even though it's not the setting for most of the movie. He was attacked by what appeared to possibly be echidnas like Knuckles in armor, who wished to somehow take Sonic's powers for themselves. A giant bird that appeared to be a type of owl had been looking after the young Sonic, who was mortally wounded in the attack, trying to defend Sonic and help him escape. She gives him a bag of gold rings and uses one to open a portal to help him escape his pursuers. It just so happens that this opening to another dimension created temporarily by the ring brings the young Sonic to Earth. The story is basically that Sonic is living in hiding and seclusion near a small Midwestern town in America. He has a cozy little den dug underground in the woods, but ventures out to watch the people of the town in secret. No one is supposed to know about him, lest another incident be triggered like the one that drove him to Earth in the first place, where others want to steal his powers. There's a man that everyone thinks is a crazy conspiracy theorist who has seen him and talks about Blue Blur, but no one takes him seriously. One night, Sonic, using his super speed, plays a game of baseball by himself. His loneliness and sadness get to him, and in a bout of emotions on the verge of a breakdown, he gets a little crazy, taps into some of his inner power, and accidentally creates a power burst that kills power to the entire town and gets the attention of everyone from the military to Dr. Robotnik himself. And believe me, Dr. Robotnik is not a hunter, but he makes an exception when it comes to hedgehogs with superpowers and comes a hunting for Sonic. Sonic soon realizes that he is in big trouble and needs help. He was supposed to use the rings to flee to a new world if he was ever being pursued for his powers again, but is reluctant to leave Earth as it's basically his home at this point. He had taken a liking to the local sheriff and decides he's the one that he's going to ask to come to his aid. The sheriff freaks when he sees Sonic and accidentally shoots him with a tranquilizer dart, causing Sonic to accidentally open a portal and drop his rings into it. You see them fall through and land on top of a building in San Francisco. The rest of the movie is essentially about Sonic and the local sheriff's journey to San Francisco to recover all the lost rings, while under constant pursuit by Dr. Robotnik. They do get the rings, and Sonic is forced into a showdown with Robotnik in one of his super advanced flying ships. Deciding that he's done running, Sonic engages the evil Dr. Eggman, as he was sometimes called in the comics, and ends up banishing him to the Mushroom World, which is where Sonic had originally intended to flee himself. The sheriff offers to let Sonic move in with him and stay in his attic, and it's a happy ending for Sonic, who finally has a home and friends he's dreamed of for so long. Then, much like a movie from the Marvel Universe, we get the post-credit scenes, I should say, which are the icing on a rather delicious cake. The first one shows Dr. Robotnik in the Mushroom World after being stranded there for maybe months. It's at this point that he really starts to look like the classic version of the evil doctor that we've seen in the Sonic comic books, games, and cartoons, for example. His mustache has grown longer and bushier, and he's wearing goggles. Not to mention he's now got a shaved head. Still not as round as the video game version, but he's definitely got the look anyways. We then see Tails, using his dual tails like helicopter blades to fly just like in the games, coming through a portal into Earth. He briefly mentions something about, he's here, before flying off towards the town Sonic calls home. When he doesn't specifically say Sonic, or while he doesn't specifically say Sonic, it is heavily implied that that is who he's here to find. So I would recommend this for anyone interested in one or more of the three following things: the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise, seeing the hilarious comedy / acting of Jim Carrey, or 3 good old-fashioned kid-friendly movies that the whole family can enjoy. With regard to those 3 things, I'd give it a 8.75 out of 10, as it's definitely above average. This gets the Matthew Bruschi seal of appealing to all ages. You may ask, do I mean ages like the Ice Age / Stone Age, for example, or age based on people's birthdays? The answer is both, my friend. Yeah, this bad boy is that universal. Dr. Robotnik's character was written very well along with his dialogue. The movie is worth seeing to watch comedy legend Jim Carrey alone. This is the Apocalyst Review of Sonic the Hedgehog. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.